Hello everybody, and welcome to another ownership report. Today we have on Jurassic Finance. They've been on a timeline recently. Well, not just recently, but ever since they first popped up. Feels like they always have something to say. So we're here to cover them on today's report and catch up with what they have coming. So today I'm joined by, first of all, Vukan from Jurassic. Vukan is the CEO of Jurassic Finance.
Are you able to hear me, see me well?
Yes, sir. We can see you. We can hear you. Welcome, man. How you doing?
Hey, brother. Doing really good and excited for this one. We shared a lot about the advisors on Twitter, and today finally we're able to, go a little bit deeper with them. We have Tzvi, we have Rob, and really excited for this conversation.
Yeah, man. I'm just as excited as you are, I think. So let's get those advisors up on stage. We can start with Rob.
Perfect.
Or Tzvi.
I just added Tzvi. We can start with
Tzvi. We can start with Tzvi. Hey, man, how you doing? This is Tzvi from Baxus.
Hey, I'm doing well. How are you guys doing?
We're doing good as well. It's a beautiful day to talk about some dinosaurs and tokenizing assets.
It's always a beautiful day to talk dinosaurs.
Yeah, so Tzvi, if you can just give a quick intro about yourself, that'd be great.
Sure, yeah. Co-founder and CEO of Baxus. We have been tokenizing rare collectibles on Solana since 2021. Our focus is wines and spirits. And been a long time fan and supporter of Vukan and everything that they're doing over there at Jurassic Fi, and the general idea of being able to bring really interesting collectible assets on chain and being able to democratize the access to that and make it more accessible to people worldwide.
Amazing. Sounds great. Let's get Rob on stage now so that we have founder of Rally. Hey Rob, man, how you doing?
Doing well. What's going on?
Yeah, feel free to give a quick intro of yourself. So
I'm Rob Petrozzo. I'm the co-founder and chief product officer at Rally. So starting in 2016, we've been creating basically stock out of all different alternative assets and all different collectibles, everything from baseball cards and classic cars and watches. And one of the most active spots on the entire product in the app, and the one that's gotten people the most excited. And then we've seen kind of the biggest sort of rush to make investments from retail has been in dinosaurs for a while. So it's been awesome to link up with the Jurassic team. I think they're doing what we always envisioned would happen. It's on chain, and it's something where dinosaurs and these real important things from the past are accessible to everybody. So I'm excited to be a part of it.
Great. I think let's just get right into it. I think I have my first question to Rob. So you already talked about, Jurassic, dinosaurs, but I do want to know a little bit of the background of, how Jurassic Finance came to you. What was the gap in the market that you were seeing for Jurassic Finance? Like, what do you think that the gap that they're filling is, and how did the whole collaboration or advisory start?
Yeah, it actually, I came to them. I think this was a couple of months ago when it first started to bubble up what they were doing on Twitter and across different platforms. And we had people in our network, really important people in finance and collectibles in the auction space, that were asking and sending a link, like, have you seen this? And I'd heard bits and pieces of it, and I was watching it on Twitter. And then I started following the team and started, if there's anything we do to help. And it's more, for us, it's always been this kind of rising tide raises all boats. And while we, focus on the regulated, SEC regulated kind of like wild, have to get through all these roadblocks to get anything done. And that's how we started the process at Rally. We always knew, and I always knew, that there's a future that feels way more liquid. And that was the biggest sort of barrier to entry for investors on Rally when it comes to dinosaurs. They love dinosaurs. It's been the most active and most, I would say, important IPOs that we've done on Rally have always been with dinosaurs. They're the highest value assets on Rally, the ones that generate the most attention. But it really was, for us, it was very much US focused. It was done the same way an IPO and a stock would happen. But it was something where the liquidity aspect was still kind of missing. And that, to me, was the last unlock. And when I saw what Jurassic was doing and what Vukan, Sora, and the team were putting together, it was pretty clear, independent of the initial fundraise, it was pretty clear that this was something that the market was going to look at much differently than they looked at what was on Rally. We had access to the best assets, but the liquidity piece was missing. So I kind of reached out. We started talking at a very sort of just generally about what the space looked like, what they were doing, what we were doing, where we would potentially work together on something in the future. And it naturally turned into, do you want to be a part of this in some formal capacity where I could lend sort of any expertise or relationships or anything I had in place to the Jurassic team. And it felt like a really natural fit from that point forward.
Yeah, and by the way, Tzvi, if you want to chime in here, feel free to do that. If you have anything
I don't want to interrupt the
topic.
experts when they're talking.
Yeah, sure. So, Rob, I think it's very interesting to me how you also said that dinosaurs are always, very exciting for people, and people are always turn up to these dinosaur raises, and Jurassic is a good example of that. What do you think that makes dinosaurs so exciting? Like, why dinosaurs over, art or classic cars or, I don't know, Hot Wheels? Like, what is it that's unique about dinosaurs that makes us feel like, I don't know.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's what it is, what you said. It's the I don't know part of it. It's so, to think there are things that lived 65 million years ago that are still relevant today is insane to most people. When you think about it in the construct of human existence, and you think about the building blocks of where we are right now as a civilization, there are these things that we, there's no photos, there's no video, there's no Instagram posts from dinosaurs. You know what I mean? There's nothing we can look back on and say this is exactly what they were, what they looked like, how they lived, where they went. We just know that they existed. They essentially owned planet Earth at a certain point, and now we're able to kind of find bits and pieces of that story. But more so, I think we at Rally, we've always dealt in nostalgia. That's kind of been a currency on the platform to a certain degree. These memories of the past and of your childhood, and it's things like baseball cards for me, and seeing when I was younger, I'd be I was living in Brooklyn with my family, and there was like a guy on our block that had like a brand new Corvette, and that was just like this car that I looked at. I remember now every time my mom took a picture of me next to it, and I still have the picture. I remember from childhood, but it kind of ebbs and flows. It goes away over time. Dinosaurs follow you from when you're 2, 3, 4, 5 years old when you first learned about it, and it's this magical thing that you kind of pay attention to and that you care about deeply. And it goes with you your entire life. And it's always something that's in conversation. There's always new museum exhibit or auction now that's happening that brings attention to it. There's always the entertainment value of a new movie, a new book, or something that comes out that kind of brings more attention to it. And they've basically proven that for 65 million years, dating back even further than that, they've been relevant and will continue to be relevant. And this is something that, like, you know, my little niece or my friends' kids are still playing with dinosaur toys the same way I was when I was 5. So it's generational, and it's not something it's something that I think, you know, Pokemon cards and wine and watches and all these things have their moments and they spike along the way. And it's great to be a part of it when it's going well. It's great to even have it when it's not going that well financially, and you'll hold on to it for a little bit. But dinosaurs continue to go like this. And I think that that's something that the consistency of the memory, of the nostalgia that goes with it, and the fact that it's so generational and that there's so much mystery still around it, maintains this type of relevance that you don't always get from other asset classes the same way you get it from dinosaurs.
And I would love to just quickly jump in here. Sorry, Abit. I would like to jump in here because something that really nice that Rob said is why I feel that dinosaurs are so different and why I feel that long term they're going to be such a fantastic asset. I see the younger generation, like my generation, I'm 23. The young generation is making more and more money, and they're going to keep making more and more money thanks to crypto and similar things. And let's say in the past 15, 20 years, when they make that money, what do they buy? They buy the Porsche, they buy whatever, you know, whatever car, or they buy a nice watch. And I feel like with the rise of the age of AI, it's getting less and less cool to own these things and more cool to own cultural assets like dinosaurs. Now that even pushes dinosaurs in front of, you know, before other types of assets, because of course they've been so old and they, you know, like tens of millions of years. But I really feel like these, you know, young kids that they're making a lot of money, they're gonna slowly stop buying these flashy things and more buying these cultural assets such as dinosaurs, because it's gonna be a much bigger status symbol when anyone can buy, you know, any Mercedes-Benz or any really cool car. But dinosaur, you know, it's very a lot rarer, and it has a lot more culture. So that's why also I believe it's such a bullish asset class, because that culture, it's impossible, I think, to get in any type of asset class, because there's no asset that's, you know, tens of millions of years old.
And that makes me wonder, Tzvi, how do you see dinosaurs? Are you also just excited about them as everybody else on this panel? And I'm also wondering, how does your experience from Baxus, how does that connect with Jurassic? How does it help with the advisory for Jurassic?
Yeah, for sure. So I think one thing that Vukan and Rob both touched on that is so relevant is, like, you know, we see nostalgia assets as being something that's really been popular, like increasing Pokemon, you know, collectible like toys, cups, people's favorite basketball teams or players that played from when they were younger. You know, and one thing that we've seen, I think, in general is the trends, like as millennials, Gen X, whatever, as Gen Z now, like as they age up and they have higher income and they have more disposable income, they look to buy those things that not only make them happy now, but the things that make them happy now tend to be the things that they wanted as kids. It's not just like rushing to the newest and latest thing. And so that's something that's really cool about Jurassic Fi and in general with dinosaurs and fossils is, you know, Rob was saying, like, I don't know, a kid, even today, like when you think about so many things have come and go, like stuff that I thought was interesting as a kid or that I played with. And yes, there's having some sort of a comeback now with Pokemon and stuff like this, but every kid loves dinosaurs. And then you look at it now and then you have dinosaurs going at Sotheby's with, like, you know, Ken Griffin stepping in and bidding $50-60 million on a dinosaur. So that's what happens is you kind of, you know, we age out, we get more money, and the things we want to own are not just the little plastic dinosaurs that we have sitting on our, you know, the toys that we had or our favorite pajamas from when we were 4 or 5. It's the fact that we can now actually own one of these. We can own, you know, and more importantly, we can own a piece of these, you know, for those of us that don't have $50-60 million lying around. So that was something that just got me super excited about, you know, dinosaurs in that case as an asset class. Again, it's this connection to history, this connection to things that are really scarce and rare. And even though, yes, they're always uncovering new dinosaurs and new fossils, et cetera, what ultimately matters, and we see this, you know, kind of, we'll call it the PSA version of the dinosaur, is that you have these, like, not all dinosaur fossils are created equal. How much of the original bone structure is there? How much of it is intact? What is the provenance? Do they know that it was sourced, you know, properly and ethically and wasn't, you know, stolen from somewhere? There's so many little factors that people don't think about that go into the back end of it. And so having, you know, advisors like Rob and you know, myself and other people that are able to step in and help with those kind of components means that you're able to make it much more transparent, much more tradable. Vukan and so we're like putting it on chain means that you now have that liquidity layer that makes it easier and accessible for people, plus the provenance and transparency. And that's what ultimately grows markets, is its accessibility to markets. It's why everyone is focusing on putting stocks on chain. The idea is giving people who don't necessarily have brokerage accounts in the US the ability to trade and have directional exposure. So from my perspective on like my experience with Baxus, I think it's very similar in the sense that we started building in 2021 on Solana. That was a very contrarian bet at the time to be doing anything that related to physical and RWAs and collectibles at the time in general was a very contrarian play to put onto blockchain. But we saw the power of distribution and liquidity as a major long-term benefit, and we knew that we wanted to be building where the world was moving. And sure enough, now we're 5 years plus in, and we're seeing it yield results. And the beauty of it is that now, Sora and Vukan can come up with this idea and say, hey, we want to do this. And the infrastructure is already there for them. So a lot of the stuff that I think I've been able to help with and, is again, providing, I'd say the experience of here are some pitfalls you can avoid. A lot of that is just like, here's the platforms that are really good for this. Here are the things that work. Here are the components that we've tried that haven't worked, just giving them things and ways to avoid some of those potential issues that they can run into, both with the tokenization and the securing and the vaulting and the distribution, because that's really been our bread and butter. We've been vaulting multi-million-dollar assets for 5+ years. We've been tokenizing them. We've been able to create that sort of exposure. And so having that infrastructure that, and that knowledge, I think is something that's really valuable to the team. And we will continue to be able to deliver value to the token holders and the other, the future participants.
And what was the reasoning behind choosing Solana as the chain that you guys do everything on? What was the reasoning behind that?
For us, it came down to, again, and this is what we're seeing now is, at the time when we launched, every NFT that was worth anything was really on Ethereum, right? Everyone was on Ethereum. That's where they were building. That's where the liquidity was. But we looked at Ethereum, especially at the time, and it didn't make sense it worked for the pure NFT JPEG kind of world because people were spending $200-$300 on a gas fee for a transaction. And that's great if you're trying to buy, a Bored Ape or something that you think is going to go to $1 million or things, especially back then when people were just doing mints and they were paying, those priority fees to try and get their mints rushed up, and they were spending hundreds, if not thousands of dollars because they knew that they'd be able to flip them or thought they'd be able to instantly flip them. And that is, again, just such a critical component to all of this, is that we looked at it and said, okay, you can't sell a $100 bottle or a $200 bottle if the fees themselves are going to cost $200, $300, $400 just for the transaction. And so what really appealed to us about Solana at the time was we understood that the future of consumer applications that are going to be built on chain are going to have to be built on chains that have low costs, low barriers to entry, and high throughput. And that was really what appealed to us about Solana. Yes, again, the reason it was contrarian is people were like, well, there's outages, there's blockages. That didn't really matter. And that's something that I have to emphasize on the consumer facing side. Yes, there are elements of finance that's really important too. And again, we've seen Solana has not had any of those issues, fingers crossed, in quite some time. And there's been major network improvements. But when you start getting into things again, we're talking even meme coins and things like that, the transaction fees are so important, especially when you're trying to present this to people around the world where they may only have $10 to put into the Dinosaur. That might be their max. They can't, for them, having to only spend 1/10 of a cent in order to be able to complete that transaction and buy in is really important, because if the transaction fees are going to be equal to or more than they can actually invest into something or buy something with, then you're going to turn them away. And Solana really solved for that and is continuing to improve and make that more accessible. And ultimately, again, when it comes down to what we're building and what Jurassic is building, is these are consumer-facing applications and consumer-facing, opportunities, and you have to be building in a way that actually meets your consumers where they are.
I'm curious, Rob, did you have any second thoughts or hesitancy about the whole Solana thing, about being on Solana, Jurassic being on Solana, and just overall?
No. I mean, listen, when we started thinking about at Rally, thinking about RWAs and what the on-chain future will look like, that was the direction we were headed anyway. And I think that from to everything Todd spoke to, the process of getting an asset that lives on chain for a regular person is really tough to begin with. And this chain is the most efficient, most inexpensive, quickest method of doing it. It makes no sense not to go that direction. I think that was if anything, that made it an easier decision for me to be a part of it than it would if it was on a different chain, without question.
And to get back to dinosaurs, how does the scarcity of these dinosaur bones and these dinosaur specimens, like eggs, teeth, and everything else, compare to other collectible markets that you've come across?
Well, I think there's a couple of important distinctions. One is that to get a full dinosaur out of the ground, especially one that's in articulation, where it's all in one place in kind of one shape and one form, that it's from one dinosaur, that to Todd's point, that the bone count is that over 50%, which makes it kind of museum quality, is rare in itself. And that's something that whole process, start to finish, of the finding on the land that you're in, doing the dig and the excavation, cataloging and archiving individual pieces, mounting, it's a 2-3 year process sometimes for certain skeletons. And so just from a time perspective, I think we're so used, as a culture, we're so used to just, I see something, I want it, I pay for it, I get it. And this is not that. So there's a scarcity value that goes along with just the process, start to finish. But then you go back even further. The United States is one of the only places where if you have a dinosaur on your land, you find it, you can sell it and keep the money, and there's no interference. And so when it comes to dinosaurs, this added factor that makes them that much more scarce, that much more rare, and makes the important ones and the high bone count versions of these dinosaurs that you find that are all from one specimen that much more valuable, is the fact that in situations now where there's a 10, 15, 20, $30 million dinosaur being sold, no one is buying that. And no one's going to sort of, and no authority in the space, institutions or auction house, is going to approve that sale or go through that process unless everything on the provenance side and on the land ownership side and the history of ownership side, the paleontology and geology team involved, unless those are all check marks and it meets all this really, really high criteria for sale, it could be worthless at that point if all those pieces aren't checked. So on top of just the fact that there's so few, and when you talk about full skeletons of something like, a Stegosaurus or a T-Rex, you're talking about dozens that exist, not hundreds or thousands. You're talking about dozens in some cases of the best quality examples. That's rare in itself. That's rarer than any baseball card, any classic car off the line. It's rare in a way that you can't even put criteria around it in some cases. But then on top of that, to get it from the ground to market into the hands of a private buyer, an institution, or a museum, has so many checks and balances along the way that you're essentially adding scarcity value and adding value in terms of monetary value and price at each step over that 1 year, 2 year, 3 year process sometimes. So it's something that kind of, in my mind, like we dealt in 25, 26 different asset categories at Rally. We made world records for sales of baseball cards and video games and classic cars. And we've seen the market rise, and we've seen this kind of rush towards collectibles and collectability in general. Dinosaurs, to me, and to the market, live in their own category because the margin of error is so small, and the ability to get your hands on a significant piece with a pool of people that all want it now is so much more scarce. So the rarity value that goes along with these dinosaurs is really hard to put on paper at this point because it's so much further than a lot of the other asset classes that we deal in.
Do you think these dinosaurs and dinosaur-related assets, and I think just in general collectibles, do you think that they could be treated as like a serious investment class? Because, I think in the past that hasn't really been the case, but now with crypto and everything happening around RWAs and tokenization, it feels like it's really coming alive as a very, very much serious investment class. And also, I'd love if you could touch upon the risks here, because every investment has its own risks. So there's probably, some sort of risk in investing in dinosaurs. And are they maybe mitigated with how Jurassic does things?
Yeah, I'll start at the end. I'll say that there's obviously risk in every investment, and this is never investment advice, but it's also one where I think that the Jurassic team has done a lot to put the measures in place to ensure that there's ultimate transparency start to finish, and that proposal systems and the way that the process is set up right now is such that the community gets to sort of make their decision before money is deployed and before new steps are taken in whatever direction they head in, which is an important part of this, and one that I think has been a long time coming, especially for kind of a Rally, which is this trusted third party that lives in between the asset and the individual investors. Our process to this point, every dinosaur bone, every asset that we put on platform goes through an SEC qualification process. So there's checks and balances there, obviously, and protections for investors. But that said, I think the on-chain future of many of these pieces is that chain of ownership, that custody, that the land rights, everything associated with this piece and with the transaction that's happening is going to be transparent, which is a huge sort of mitigation of risk. Now to go to the first question around the kind of the legitimacy of where all these collectibles are headed. I think it goes back to a time when, you know, stocks at one point were considered too risky for individual investors. And then REITs came along and that was a little bit too risky for individual investors. And then crypto was too risky for individual investors. But what we see is that a lot, you know, young disruptors, people that understand this space, understand the mind of this new investor class comes in, formalizes the process. They do it at a time and an inflection point, which is happening right now in the market, where it's a very ubiquitous conversation around dinosaurs and collectible investments. You start to get institutions involved, and then you look back and a year, 2, 3, 10 years later, all of a sudden, it's just completely commonplace to have that be an investment in a portfolio the same way a stock, a bond, a REIT would be, or an ETF would be inside of a portfolio. I think we're at that inflection point right now. I think that what the Jurassic team is doing is opening up what one of the key components of formalizing an investment and turning it into something that everybody understands and becomes commonplace is that they're adding this liquidity component to it that doesn't necessarily exist in the common markets right now because there's no, you know, dinosaur stock on the NYSE. And I think that they're able to do something now that allows for kind of ownership at a common share level across the board in the process and governance in the process that hasn't existed in the standard markets up to this point. And they're doing it at a time when crypto has so many different products for retail and it's in 401ks. And it's something that I think this is the exact right time to do that. And the prices are putting in that direction as well. Art has always been kind of the institutional investment. It's had a very specific, you know, LTV ratio for loans that go with art. And we're starting to see that trickle into other asset classes because we're seeing these multi-million-dollar sales. We're seeing it in conversation, and we're seeing the type of conversation liquidity that's required to make something part of the ethos and part of the zeitgeist. I think we're at an acceleration point too with crypto, that things move a lot quicker than they did from the 40s and 50s and 60s to now, where equities became commonplace. I think we're really close to seeing collectibles not just be an institutional component of investing thesis, but also be part of every retail portfolio. And I think dinosaurs are the path of least resistance to get there.
Thank you, Rob. That was a great answer. And just to put a little bit of a more lighthearted question to everybody, I'd love to hear everybody who's here. What are you guys' favorite dinosaurs? I think we can start with Vukan.
Yeah, my favorite one is the Ankylosaurus, which you probably don't know what it is if you're not into dinosaurs, but it's the one that has spikes on the back. So it has a really cool long tail and has spikes on the back. I actually thought I'm a super massive Super Mario fan when I was a little kid, and I always thought that the villains like Bowser and Bowser Jr., that it was Ankylosaurus. And then later I realized it's not, it's something else. And I just started to love it since then. So it's kind of like a misinformation love, but it still ended up being my favorite one because like it has spikes on the back, and has a super nice long tail, and it's my favorite one.
Yeah, next up, Rob, it's you can tell us your favorite dinosaur.
Yeah, I'll jump in. So it was for a long time a Brontosaurus when I was younger, but that it turns out that scientists removed Brontosaurus from the dinosaur family tree because it's too close to an Apatosaurus, which was a species they'd already found. So now I'm in that lane. We have a Barosaurus on Rally that we did an IPO of a like around 100-foot specimen that the dig will likely be done in the next 6 to 9 months. Similar, like really enormous long neck dinosaur. They move kind of slow. They don't really fight. They're plant eaters. It's just a really interesting to think that there were these 150 foot enormous giant animals on Earth is wild to me to think. But a close second, and this is not I'm biased a little bit, but not really, like the Triceratops and the horns and all that. That was like when I was younger, I would just draw. I was always drawing Triceratops and like coloring books with Triceratops and stuff. So there's a nostalgic piece of that to me as well. But yeah, I didn't want to pick T-Rex. I felt like that's too easy. So I always stayed away from that when I was younger.
Yep, Tzvi, what's your favorite dinosaur?
I'm always waiting for somebody else to yell out Velociraptor so I could pull a Step Brothers call. But my favorite dinosaur, man. I mean, there's always the T-Rex, and of course, because when I was a kid, like I would go to the Museum of Natural History, and just seeing that there was just like such an impactful, like overall, just super cool thing. But there was actually, I want to pronounce it properly. Give me one second. I'm going to Google it so I can know, because there's one that I remember that was like, I really like the like aquatic dinosaurs. One second.
Is that Mosasaurus?
No, the mosasaur I love, but it wasn't that one. It was how do I the ichthyosaurus, I think is what it like. I again, I'm pronouncing it horrendously, but
I think that's the one.
Which looked like it looked almost like I guess from the renderings, like it looked like a dolphin, but was actually this like ridiculous, like ridiculous, like actual dinosaur.
That's a deep cut, dude. That was a good one.
For me, that's what I like, is because that's for me part of the whole thing is like seeing the dinosaurs that like you can see almost the natural evolution. Like when I look at a turkey these days, like we have wild turkeys near where I live, and I look at them and I'm like, that is a dinosaur. Like that is literally a dinosaur. Like you look at the neck, you look at like the scaling, the claws, and I'm like, okay, that makes sense. So for me, it's always cool to kind of see those dinosaurs that are at that period where I'm like, oh, I understand what, how the evolution worked, that we have modern animals that kind of look like this, as opposed to just being like, okay, this was, some super giant lizard that, that died out in, a meteor shower, etc.
All right. And I want to get one more question in before we move on to our closing segment. And that question is going to be to Tzvi, which will be, what do you guys what do you think about just MetaDAO? I think Jurassic is the first time where we've seen a tokenization company being funded by decision markets or futarchy, and I know that you're somewhat involved in the MetaDAO ecosystem. I think you used to have a futard profile picture, if I recall correctly, or maybe you still do. I'm not sure, but
it comes and goes.
Yeah, so I'd love to get your thoughts on that, about the whole MetaDAO phenomenon.
Yeah, so I mean, MetaDAO to me, I put out a tweet this morning that I was thinking about, because we've seen all these new investments. I don't remember which fund, but Kraken. Somebody made a deal with Aave, and they bought both the token and they bought equity. Dragonfly just did a deal with VVV, with Venice, and they bought both equity and some amount of the token. And I think that the issue that we're seeing over there is people want, I'm trying to think, people want tokens to reflect like equity. They want companies to be able to like treat them like equity. They want to feel like they have ownership. And the issue with these models is that, equity has been around for a very long time and is very specific functions. Companies do not run an endless TWAP, buying back their stock on a regular basis. They take their money and their earnings and they reinvest it to help scale the value of the company. And what we have from token holders, because I find that often token holders are very, very short-sighted and short-term minded, that's what they want. They want all of the value to accrue back to the token. And that's just not how companies function. They need their revenues to be able to operate their businesses and scale. That's where the value creation comes from. And I think that that's something that we're still seeing, and MetaDAO has really paved the way for how that can be solved on a go-forward basis, and potentially even projects that could over time migrate, because you're able to give that same that ownership structure, that same benefit that people look for and get out of equity, that knowledge that like, hey, these founders are not just going to run away with it, but you also don't have the same expectations of like, hey, they need to be spending all of their revenue to buy back the token. They need, the holders of the tokens, because of decision markets, have a lot more control. So they feel like they have a lot more knowledge, but they also have the ability to empower the founders to go and do their thing without it, again, being like, hey, we're expecting every single dollar to flow back. But I do think that that's something, and MetaDAO itself has done this. When it was scaling, like it was able to have proposals that external funds would throw out basically to say like, hey, we want to buy more tokens. They're able to mint more tokens to sell. And the value proposition that goes to the decision market then and to the holders is, do we think that this extra cash that you guys would be selling will continue to help benefit the long-term value? That's the beauty of futarchy and the beauty of the model that was constructed over there and all of Robin's work. So I think that when we look at these new eras of companies, we look at this new age of classes, people seeking the value accrual mechanisms of equity and looking for it in tokens, the only real place that we're seeing that now is either companies that have only a token or only equity. And the perfect hybrid over there, the idea to create this liquidity, but also this more long-term alignment between token holders and the company, is MetaDAO. And again, I think that Vukan and Sora did it entirely right. This is the type of thing that really benefits from, again, people understanding the structure, people understanding the long-term capabilities of this, as well as, again, the short-term where it's like, hey, if you bought into the raise and you were like, hey, actually, I'm looking to rotate or whatever, there's liquidity there, there's the opportunity. But, I love those opportunities because I really view, Warren Buffett, as much as he wouldn't have necessarily understood it, he would have loved crypto in the sense of it's the ultimate transfer from the impatient to the patient. You have really good companies, really good tokens that have really good tokenomics and good models that people dump when they just feel like the narrative isn't there, or like, hey, it's not the fastest moving asset and we're looking for 20x's overnight. But that's really where the patient buyers get the opportunity to buy, again, those long-term value accrual mechanisms. And Roar is obviously a huge opportunity for that, and MetaDAO tokens in general, because again, there's protections that simply do not exist, even for traditional equity investors, specifically safe investors, where they really don't have any insight or ability to help steer the companies or to prevent rogue founders and rogue spend, which is something that has been historically an issue within the crypto space, and something that MetaDAO really aligned, again, both the holders and the founders with. The founder tokens only unlocking after certain financial milestones, certain actual production milestones, like real roadmaps that they have to fulfill on before they get the exposure, incentivizes them to stick around for the long run. So love everything that MetaDAO is doing. Have been involved since the very earliest beginnings. Love the companies that have come out of MetaDAO and the organizations that have been formed. And again, super bullish. Rob and I have known each other for a few years, like really digging into collectibles, liquidity, like how you create this sort of access, but also again solve for that layer of, okay, but what do you do in the meantime while you're waiting for these things to appreciate in value, or waiting for that unique buyer who's going to come along and actually buy this asset. And so it's really cool to work with him and to work with the Jurassic Fi team to like really bring this to life. And again, take the best elements of the fractionalization and collectibles and the stuff that Rob really paved the way for, and take the incredible work that's been done by MetaDAO and on-chain and on Solana, and really combine those two to create this, what could end up being the future of almost all sort of new capital formation for assets.
Rob, was Jurassic the first time you've heard about MetaDAO, or did you hear about MetaDAO before the whole Jurassic thing happened? And I'm wondering what your first thoughts were when you even saw this model.
Yeah, I mean, it was right around the same time. I didn't realize that the two were connected until I started digging into Jurassic, because I was just getting hit with it at the same time. I think that when you live in a world of fiat mostly, which is where a lot of my transactions, a lot of my company has been to this point, you're paying second tier attention to what's happening in the crypto space outside of individual investments. So it hit me all at the same time, and I started getting a little bit deeper on it. The first thing I thought was that if that existed when we were raising money for Rally, that would have been the place that we would have raised money for Rally. And I think that a lot of the way that our company has evolved over time was based on a lot of board decisions and a lot of directions we were going in based on what the implied needs of investors were, but not necessarily in a transparent model where we were able to sort of make those decisions with the community, which is where we always wanted to be. But the process and the product didn't exist for it, and it does now. And that's the first thing I thought. And then seeing the way that Jurassic was doing their raise first time around, and also you see the success of so many projects and so many different platforms on MetaDAO at this point. The oversubscription is an indication of demand, but it's also an indication that the teams that are like Jurassic that are going there to do their raises are doing it the right way. And I think that that's the one piece I look back on now, and I wish it would have existed when we were doing our first couple of rounds at Rally, because it's the direction that we would have gone in.
All right, so I think it's time to continue into our closing segment where everybody can say their last words or final words or the goodbyes. We can start with Tzvi. If you have anything more to say about this topic, MetaDAO, Jurassic, tokenization, anything you got on your mind, feel free to just get it out of your system.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say that the thing I think Vukan and Sora, like, I'm incredibly bullish on them. I'm bullish on the way that they thought about this. Like, even before we spoke, they came with a really thoughtful approach. They've really been trying to understand like the multiple layers and how you build something like this so that it's sustainable. And to Rob's point, that was reflected in the oversubscription and people's just sheer excitement for everything that they're doing. It's clear, I always like to say, like, I love being an advisor. I love helping in this stuff, and I love being the least capable of the advisors. The guys that they brought on, Rob, and their paleontology experts have been like, really know how to guide them. And for me, that's like, I'm bullish on founders who know, who come prepared, who know what they know, and then also know what they don't know, and find the right people to help fill that in. So, I am a big believer in things that have been around for thousands, hundreds of thousands, and millions of years. Will be here for hundreds of thousands of millions of years. We focus on the alcohol space. People think it's dying. They're wrong. Comes and goes. There are trends. There are cycles, and I think we're going to see the same thing across the board. So it's absolutely, absolutely, just incredibly excited and bullish, and excited to own some dinosaurs.
All right, next up, Rob.
Yeah,
what do you got on your mind?
I'll say the exact same thing. I think that dinosaurs are this thing that gets everybody excited. Everybody wants to talk about it when it comes up, no matter how old you are, how young you are. But it does take, I think, a young, motivated team that understands the space and cares deeply about the community that they're building with. And I think that the Jurassic team is that without question. I think there's never, I'll send messages at 3 a.m, 3 p.m. There's never a time I'm not getting a response back, because that excitement is the same, I think, for Sora and Vukan, the team, that it was for me when we first started getting opportunities to purchase and to acquire dinosaurs for Rally. I see that same kind of spark and that same magic. And I think that you don't have to be bullish on crypto to be bullish on this. And I think that's the biggest differentiator that at Rally we've always looked at as what we do next, where we go next has to be somewhere where there's enough magic and enough people that care to be independent of the method in which the money is raised or the process of the product. And you have all of that with the Jurassic team right now and what they're building. So I'm excited to see where it heads.
All right. Last up, we got Vukan.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I'll just take the time here to say the best thing that I see. I mean, there's so many great things about the project, but the team is literally me and Sora, and we're like two very, young, ADHD, energy-filled guys. And these two guys could never get 15 million from investors. So on one side, we need to thank MetaDAO for bringing this structure to the market and allowing us to do that. And on the other side, it's like you have these two guys who are like execution killers, and then you have these three incredible people who you have one guy who's in the Solana crypto tokenization space, and like Tzvi helped us so much shaping what Jurassic is right now and what it's gonna be. Then you have Rob, who is like the king of collectibles, and with Rally can take over that entire ecosystem. And then we have Yineng, who is our paleontologist advisor, and he's like one of the best in the industry for dinosaurs and provenance and buying and selling. So you have like the crypto side, the collectible side, and you have the dinosaur side, and you have two guys who are absolutely crazy that are governed by futarchy, which at least from my opinion is one of the best governance models that we've seen in a long time. And you put everything together, and I mean, you get Jurassic. You see the hype that we're getting, and I'm just so excited for what's gonna come. July is gonna be such a massive month. If you've been following our Twitter, you've seen the announcements, and we're just so excited, so thankful for MetaDAO, for our advisors, and just super happy to take dinosaurs to the market.
All right, I believe that is it. So thank you for everybody. Thank you to everybody for tuning in. Thank you to our listeners. Thank you to Rob, Vukan, Tzvi. Thank you, everybody. And I will see you guys next time. Goodbye.